Hey everybody, what's up? Ehren right here, Question Period Canada, and we've got the highlights. It's getting so crazy on Parliament Hill, all these MPs are flipping out. These are the highlights, let's get them going. Poilievre is up to bat first. He's asking CHYSTIA FREELAND questions like, do you have any common sense? She sure does love the Ukraine.
Leader of the opposition.
Mr. Speaker, last week we were proud to vote against more inflationary, bureaucratic spending that does nothing for working class Canadians other than to cause, if more government spending were to solve the problems, we wouldn't have 2 million people lined up at food banks and 9 out of 10 young people unable to afford a home. Now they want to quadruple the carbon tax, just as we learn that Canadians will be forced to spend another $700 just to feed themselves. Will they follow our common sense plan to axe the tax?
Yeah. The Honourable Minister of Finance and Deputy Prime Minister of Canada.
Mr. Speaker, last week, the Conservatives voted against Operation Unifier, which is about direct military support for Ukraine. They've also voted against our free trade agreement with Ukraine. When we look at the extreme right south of the border parroting Putin's lines, we used to think that could never happen in Canada. But it is happening here, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we are proud to say, Slava Ukraini.
I've got no issues with Ukraine, but I'm Canadian and I love Canada first, always will. Andrew Scheer has a heated question for Jonathan Wilkinson, who thinks the Conservatives should be ashamed.
Capel.
When they have a chance to provide relief to all Canadians and First Nations, they say, we'll see you in court, Mr. Speaker. They have succeeded, though, in uniting Canadians around one thing: their hatred for the carbon tax. As hardworking Canadians across the country visit food banks for the first time or turn their thermostats down, Northerners are really facing the sting of the carbon tax. The Premier of the Northwest Territories went on to say, quote, I mean, ideally, a complete exemption for the territory is what we would hope for because, like I said before, the costs are already high. Why won't the Prime Minister have some mercy on Canadians and axe the tax?
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources and Energy.
I think it's important that the honourable member stop misleading Canadians. Research coming out of the University of Calgary last week shows that their plan to make pollution free again will only benefit those earning over $250,000 a year and hurt almost everybody else. The Conservative leader says that he cares about affordability, but last week in the middle of the night they voted to cut affordable housing construction, cut school food program, cut dental care for the most vulnerable, cut affordable child care. Shame, shame, shame.
I do my best not to hate things, but the carbon tax, I don't agree with. I don't think it makes sense. Up next, Mike Barrett, an MP from Ontario, has a heated battle back and forth with FPC, who's just denying government scandals and slush funds, says it's okay.
The Honourable Member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Canada's Ethics Commissioner has launched an investigation into a second Liberal-appointed member at their billion-dollar Green Slush Fund. 2 Liberal appointees together have funneled more than $600,000 to their own companies. It's clear this Prime Minister isn't worth the cost to struggling Canadians. And though the NDP Liberal government tried to silence the whistleblower will be testifying at committee tonight. So can the Prime Minister cut the drama, and so we don't have to wait to this evening, and tell Canadians how many other Liberal insiders got rich?
The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, in fact, let's cut the drama, Mr. Speaker. These Conservatives are so against climate change, Mr. Speaker, that they want to cut one of the institutions that has financed clean technology in this country, Mr. Speaker. The moment we learned about the allegation, we launched an investigation. We took remedial action. The chair of the board has resigned. The CEO has resigned, Mr. Speaker. We're going going to get to the bottom of this, restore confidence, have governance, and continue to fund clean tech in this country.
The honourable member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes.
These Liberals and that minister was satisfied with their cover-up report and wanted the board chair and their CEO to implement the recommendations at this corrupt organization. But now with the Auditor General investigating and the Ethics Commissioner investigating 2 Liberal appointees, the board chair and the CEO have resigned in disgrace. There's $1 billion on the line, and we know that up to $150 million has been embezzled. Canadians can't afford this Prime Minister after 8 years of him and his NDP Liberal government. We want to know, it's very easy, who got rich?
The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
You know, Mr. Speaker, what Canadians cannot stand anymore, those watching at home, is these conservative making stories and allegations, Mr. Speaker. That's what Canadians at home cannot stand anymore. They saw last week what they're able to do. Let me get the facts straight, Mr. Speaker. The moment we learned about the allegation, we took action. And by the way, the chair that is referring served under conservative government, Mr. Speaker.
That's right.
Let's not focus on people, Mr. Speaker. Let's focus on restoring governance, funding clean tech in this country. We'll get to the bottom of this and restore confidence in this institution.
Good answer.
What do you think about the coalition government? It would seem like Jenny Kwan, an MP from British Columbia, NDP, is sick of the Liberals and the coalition.
From Vancouver East.
Right here in Ottawa, the average rent for a one-bedroom has hit a record high of $2,100 a month. It's close to $3,000 in Vancouver and Toronto. It is unacceptable that the out-of-touch Liberals are delaying housing funding for another 2 years when people can't afford rent now. Then there's the Conservatives who don't even believe in community housing and would rather give handouts to luxury condo developers. Will the Liberals stop delaying and get the money out the door now to build the much-needed affordable housing?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my honourable colleague for her question and for her advocacy for additional investments in affordable housing and housing more broadly. I would remind my honourable colleague that in fact there are programs that exist today that are rolling dollars out the door to get more homes built. In fact, just a few weeks ago, we announced more than $4 billion worth of loans that's going to result in more than 12,000 new apartments being constructed. In addition, we recapitalized our affordable housing fund to the tune of $1 billion in the fall economic statement, on top of the more than $300 million going to cooperative housing, which will be rolling out early in the new year. I'm willing to work with all members of the House, including that member, to build more homes faster.
One more highlight, Eric Malilo, an MP from Ontario who's very handsome, has questions for the hippy-dippy-dippy Jenna Sudds, who's turning much more into a politician. She's getting nasty.
The Honourable Member from Kenora.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost of Christmas dinner. His carbon tax are driving up the costs so high that Canadian households are struggling as we head into the holiday season. But what's worse is that he's planning to quadruple this tax on groceries, gas, and home heating. Instead, Mr. Speaker, why doesn't the Prime Minister axe his carbon tax so that Canadians can afford Christmas dinner?
The Honourable Minister for Families, Employment.
Mr. Speaker, in a shocking turn of events just last week, the Conservative Party held hostage the progress and investments that we continue to make in Canadians. When given the chance to support increasing the number of childcare spaces in rural and underserved communities, what did they do, Mr. Speaker? They voted against. What does this mean? This means not supporting new and much-needed childcare spaces in rural and underserved communities. Mr. Speaker, they are just not worth the risk.
Those are the highlights from today's question period, December 11th. It is getting heated on the Hill. The Conservatives, you can tell, are fighting for Canadians. The Liberals seem to think everything is just fine in their hands. I don't know. So my name's Ehren. These are the highlights from question period. We do it every day. To send you off, this is Gerard Detel, a francophone MP from the Conservative Party that breaks down and speaks English. I was waiting for this moment. That's it. Like and subscribe. We're having fun here every day. Catch the next video.
I understand the minister for being a little embarrassed because Canada went from 58 to 62. Those are the results after a year of this government's efforts. After 8 years, what's happened? 8 years of important messages, but never reaching those objectives.
In 2015, Canada is back, the Prime Minister, but today the Canada is way, way back. That's the reality.